Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up, so I can make a better me.
Welcome everyone to the Pommy and Brownie AFL show. Fazz late out, and I am actually the Pom. Don't be deceived. I am just in glasses. You don't often see this, but I'm joined by the legendary Navy Blue Corner legend, the best podcast, in my opinion, in the industry. A very positive guy. I've got the big Ian dog here. How you doing, Ian?
Oh, mate, firstly, thanks for having me. Great intro. That has to get you up and about, and some very kind words, mate. I'm doing really well. It's a bit of an interesting trade period for us Carlton supporters, to be honest, compared to what it's usually been, but a little bit nice one to sort of sit back a bit in this one.
It's been a cup of tea trade period, hasn't it? Like, I've just been sat back. Obviously, we've got a lot to digest with the trade period. We'll get into it. Some massive deals. But, I mean, I suppose we'll begin like we do every week with what's going on in the world of Carlton.
Because we want retribution. Oh, yeah, we want retribution. Oh, yeah, we want retribution. Oh, yeah, we want retribution.
You're getting a lot of love as well, Ian. You're getting a lot of big
Appreciate it, Gavin. That's what we like to see. Appreciate it, mate.
I reckon Gav's very happy that Fazz is a late out for alcoholism today after last week. But we've obviously got the biggest bit of news, and I'm very excited to use this. But we did have a crocodile done deal. Snap. Setterfield. He left Carlton for effectively a swap of nothing picks. What did you feel about that trade? And chat, what did you guys feel?
Yeah, look, it was an interesting one. We obviously gave away 68 this year, got a future fourth. I was probably hoping we'd get something more back, but I understand he's out of contract, so you really don't have much bargaining power. Didn't look like we really wanted to keep him that much. Look, I know a lot of Carlton supporters on Twitter were sort of almost seeming like he was like the greatest player that's ever lived. It was Setterfield out there. I know you said before jumping on this, it was like, yeah, just because he's got the 43 on it, it's literally Cooter. But I don't know. Look, he's down the pecking order. Yeah, he can play wing a little bit, can play a bit inside midfield, is sort of a bit versatile in that, but he's so far down the pecking order that it's not the worst one to lose, to be honest. And I'm not too fussed, to be honest. I don't know how you feel, Pommy.
Well, I mean, Setterfield as a footballer is probably a bit like my first intimate experience with a girl. I'm not quite sure what happened, and I'm not quite sure what he's a specialist in. I thought Austin gave us a little bit of an inclination of what happened, and he said these wonderful words. Will was coming out of contract. We have very limited opportunity here due to our wonderful depth in the midfield. Will had every right to explore his options, and we were more than satisfied to facilitate a trade and have a bit of flexibility for next year. The offer Essendon offered was greater than any offer we were prepared to present Will and his agent. And I think he's 24, 25 years old, isn't he?
Yeah.
I like the fact that we didn't do what other clubs have done and hold him to ransom. I think stock had been released when Austin was honest and said that there was limited interest, and the way we can give him the interest is by releasing him on a free without any burden of contract. I think that just is him backing himself up and saying, Voss keeps saying opportunity. My definition as opportunity is internally, but if there's an opportunity for you to further your career elsewhere, we also help aid that. And that's all that trade said to me. It was basically, don't go through PSD, make sure you can choose where you want to go. And the only time I'll say it, good luck to him.
Yeah, and look, it helps probably for culture a little bit that, like, we will sort of look after you to an extent, even though we are getting rid of a player like that where we weren't going to use him. It was clear he's not in our plan. So why haggle over it? Why say, no, we've got to get in a second rounder or you're staying with us when you clearly, like, what's our bargaining power? He's out of contract, and don't get me started on out of contract players not being free agents and things like that, because that's a whole nother argument we can get into. But when you're looking at him, it seemed like all the wording was, it's really either Dow or Setterfield stays, depending on the value. When Dow's contracted, didn't look like any club really wanted to pay much for him because of that. Setterfield's out. He's the one to leave. If you ask me which one I wanted to keep, it's probably Setters, just for the ability to play a couple of extra positions around. But it's honestly not too much in between them. What's your kind of thoughts on the lack of depth potentially for letting a player like him go? Because do you think we're a bit thin in midfield because of letting a player like Setterfield go?
Not really. I think that my biggest concern is I think with Akers coming in, you've got the outside depth. So you've got the outside depth straight away. We're instantly +1. If I was a betting man, Oliver Hollands is coming. And Oliver Hollands, when I saw him play this year, it's been like the first time I've heard the Beatles. I have tears in my eyes when I see him run down that wing. So that's sorted. There's scope for Hollands to play inside. Carroll has been predominantly inside in the back half of the year, which I think is I'd rather have him as the 7th midfielder. And if you say I've got 4 games, build him into it because he's the future. And with Dow, I've been an anti-Dow man. I'm going to hold my hands up. I don't think he can make it. I think there's so many glaring deficiencies in his game, but he's a pure inside midfielder. And I hope to Christ there is a mini injury in the middle of the year and Dow gets 4 games and we're having the conversation like Lewis Young when we're like, oh shit, Lewis Young's got to replace Liam Jones and Oscar McDonald. And suddenly we're like, fuck Oscar McDonald. I hope we're in that situation that there's maybe a minor injury to someone like Kennedy. Dow comes in and we're like, Jesus, God, he's good. Yeah. And we're in a wonderful position then.
Yeah, I was hoping to see him like this season get a bit of a run. He sort of had 1 game straight out of the team, 1 more game straight out of the team. It's hard to get that continuity in there. But I guess going back to Setters as well, I said this today to a mate talking about letting Setterfield go. It's like every single time he comes in, I feel like his first game in, you start to get excited because he shows quite a bit. And you're like, oh, where's his Setterfield been? He's about to burst in and become the player we all thought he was going to. We've unlocked Setterfield. And then 2-3 games later, it's back to the 2 setters, go and figure out your game, and then he might come back in. So looking at, excuse me, sort of the list spot of Setterfield compared to maybe it's a Carroll, maybe it's a draftee we bring in. If we're keeping these sort of mid-range players that aren't going to take us forward, they're going to be above some of these young kids. They're probably not like necessarily list cloggers, but they're clogging up the opportunity for someone else to take it that may have that higher ceiling. And something I always talk about on the podcast is loving those high ceiling players and backing them in. I think we've seen Setterfield's best, and yeah, I'm happy to let go.
No, I'm with you. And I think Chris here is a genius, Chris, as well, because you're giving me a segue into the next segment. But we did what's best for Setters, spot on, not the club. And my point here I want to allude to is old Carlton. Carlton 3 or 4 years ago. Remember the much maligned tracking of Brendan Ellis? And he was shown around the club. And if you remember, his agent said on radio that after he'd signed with Gold Coast, he would never deal with Carlton Football Club ever again. And he will make sure that his representatives won't ever deal with them. And I think these little things, when you get rid of him, like we have done Setterfield, that says to the players, firstly, we prioritize you and we do care about you. And if there is an opportunity we can't provide, we're going to enable it for you. But it also says to other club players, hang about, I've been dicked around, Dunkley, dicked around for 2 weeks when he said he wants to leave. Waited. There was rumours on PSD. Ollie Henry, if we have to send him to PSD, we'll send him. They look at that and go, well, you know what? Carlton don't do that. Carlton handle themselves with a bit of respect and a bit of dignity. Let's go.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like I think so. I think so. You need to look after your players even when they're leaving the football club. Like you talk about that, like trying to say, no, we don't want what you're offering us. Send him into the preseason draft. Like the stress and anxiety for players, like even Sauce was speaking about when they did that to Jack Martin to try to bring him across and just how hard that is for the player because they don't know what's going to happen. And you never know if someone's randomly going to take him, even though it hasn't happened so far. Yeah, I'm all about what Austin's been doing since he's hit this club. I think we've always been better for everything he's done so far.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of rumours, people saying he can't negotiate. I actually admire he didn't negotiate this deal, because I think the reputation of Carlton is we're club first over players. And I think the quicker Austin can get rid of that and say, nah, we're all about the players, we're all about the development, is good. Yeah. And that leads me on to Mackay. I don't know if anyone heard the Mackay interview on Dylan Friends. It was absolutely phenomenal. But there's a bit I want to talk about, which I think is very damaging. And he talks about how 90% of the group now do the extra things. And when he first got drafted, it was kind of uncool and you felt like an outcast doing the extra sessions, because some of the senior players kind of looked at you like you were a teacher's pet and you were trying to get in the good books. And that really alarmed me when he said, now everyone's on the same page. When you're a young kid, you're looking at Cripper, he's doing the extra sessions. You're looking at Dow even, he's doing the extra sessions. So you instantly fit in by doing the right thing. And Mackay talks about how he avoided doing that because he felt like he was an outcast if he did. And that said to me, Jesus, everything I thought about Carlton for the last 5 years evidently is true. I'm not over dramatic. And that is very refreshing to hear, because I thought Harry is the kind of guy that speaks from gut, as was that interview when he said finals doesn't matter.
Look, it was damning comment on the last Carlton regime. And look, it sums up why we were so shit for all of these years. If that's what's going on behind closed doors, where every single one of these players is, what are you doing that extra K run? What are you actually trying? What's this bullshit? Like, that's disgusting to kind of hear that that's what the leaders at that club were doing. And yeah, it's good to know that this has actually changed. Now leaders are trying to get the best out of people. Like you mentioned Dow, where he immediately, I think it was at the end of last season, like went up to Walshy and was trying to do everything he was doing, even though Walshy's a bit younger than him, seeing his preparation, going, I need to fix something because I want to be the best. I want to get the best out of myself. And that was what I like to hear about Harry as well. I don't know if it's a little bit bad because he was getting so much outside help, and it kind of makes you think, is our program not 100% good enough? Like, should we be doing better in other areas so Harry doesn't have to look for another psych, doesn't have to look for a better nutritionist, little things? But I do like that we're trying to get competitive edges. And if that's the culture now, that every player on this list is coming into the football club as a youngster thinking, looking at the other guys around thinking, okay, if that's what Cripper's doing and he's just won the Brownlow, well, that's what I'm going to be doing. And probably why our development of youngsters through that period was a little bit hit or miss. It was either the strong survived and those that needed a bit of help just didn't make it.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, that's a worrying thing. 2016, you look at some of them players, and I remember doing a lot of reviews of the training sessions, and I remember spending a lot of time at Richmond and saying that the vibe from Carlton to Richmond was totally different in the training session, the intensity levels. And like Steph correctly says here, very astute, it does feel like 2016 maybe was full of flogs. I'm not going to pin players. It's hard to guess. But yeah, I do know Daisy, God bless him, was obviously a flag winner. A flag winner. But I do know he loved a little bit of banter. Do you know what I mean? Loved a little bit of that. And imagine if you're coming in to the AFL and you look, who are you going to trust? Patrick Cripps, young leader, or Daisy Thomas, the guy who's actually won a flag? And you're probably going to look at Daisy Thomas and go, well, he knows how to win. And if he's doing stupid shit like filling boots full of jelly and stuff, but Cripper's doing weights, I'm probably going to be like, well, Daisy has a bit of a laugh. That maybe fun is the way to win flags.
And you don't know if, like, even though we're just completely speculating, you don't know if there was leaders at the time at the club that because we hadn't won anything, they were thinking, well, maybe my preparation isn't right and I've got to look to someone like Daisy and try to pick up a few things because he's won it, so maybe he does know things, and then that helps, unfortunately, make the culture a lot worse. You just don't know what went on, but it's just, it's nice to hear that things are clearly changing and we're taking steps towards being a great team. Like, Mackay signs the massive deal. We've locked in all our stars basically now, so got the next few years to really finally win something.
Yeah, mate, spot on. I thought another part here as well about the culture change was a wonderful part when he talked about signing for Carlton. And he said, mid-year last year, we were going through the third coach. We were going through a change of administration up at the top. There was a lot of question marks. Is this the place for me to see out my career? And I love the part where he said very quickly into 2022, he realised that we were ticking them boxes and that something had changed, and he knew he'd made the right choice and he was going to stay, and it was only Carlton. And that for me was literally the first, and I wish Carlton, if Carlton media watch this, start giving us the players unfiltered. Like, we can cop a few stupid things they say, but I love the fact that that felt like that was Harry speaking to a mate and not, oh shit, everything I say now is going to be on Twitter. It felt very relaxed and him just telling us how it is.
It's probably the thing I think Dill does so well, kind of being mates with a lot of players, and the way his interview style is very much like bloke just chatting to a mate. And I think that's probably the best part about that podcast. You get those little insights that maybe if it was an actual journalist, you wouldn't get that kind of connection. But like, you take your Carlton bias away and look at Harry and those players coming out of contract. Like, how many coaches can you have? How many false dawns can you keep having? And it's not just coach, it's all the coaches there, all these assistant coaches, CEOs. How many people at this football club have to keep changing over and nothing really happening in a positive light for them to turn around and think it's so dysfunctional? Like, people like Horn Francis, for an example, like he's citing that being a big reason why he doesn't want to stay at North, because he's gone, well, these guys are a rabble. It'd be easy for Harry to turn around and think, what's the point in sticking with this? Like, I don't know if the next coach is going to be any good. So another thing to see literally within less than a year, him go, yeah, Jesus, we are on the right track with everything we've brought in. Sign me up.
Mate, I love it. And that brings us on to the quiet trade period. Obviously, culture, the list. We've heard the list is the list quite a bit, I've noticed, from Vossi and from Nick Austin. He's confirmed today that we will be taking all 4 picks to the draft. We can speculate he'll probably, I've got a feeling there'll be a live pick. I think we both agree on that. There'll be some excitement. But unfortunately, he let me down. We only had one crocodile done deal.
Sad.
Can't believe you've wasted that, Nick. This was your chance. And Blake Acres coming in, obviously filling a huge need. And to you, Ian, and to the chat, what do you aim with 4 positions? You don't have to give me names, but 4 positionals. What are you hoping to see with them 4 people?
It's a really tough thing. Looking at this list, there's just not a lot of really holes. Like, there's a couple of probably maybe depth issues that you think maybe like key position, particularly key forward. It's Charlie, it's Harry, maybe TDK, and then no one else. Like, you don't want really Silvani being that next key tall, but is like another youngster the right way to go? Develop another one? I don't know. Is it better to use that in the trade period and bring in I'll throw a name like a Radigalia, someone that has a few more years in that, building into the AFL career? I don't know, but I think we still need another midfielder now that we've got rid of a Setterfield. Keep developing this midfield. I'd love someone with a bit of pace that can actually burst away rather than these more sort of inside midfielders. I weirdly still think we're missing sort of like, maybe it's a high half forward, but someone that can kick goals and actually mark the ball. Probably what like Jack Martin's meant to be. I think we still miss that kind of connector rather than that pure sort of small crumbing forward. Those are probably like the key things. And then obviously there's ruck depth, but I don't think, again, someone in the draft is the perfect way to go about that. But I'd love to hear what the people think and what you think, Pommy.
Mate, I think everyone's covered it. We've got the legend that is Rio. He wants some rucks, versatile toes, key possession depth, high half forward, scoring power, wing key forward, mid ruck, good 2-way runner, high half forward. Yeah, I mean, I agree with the general consensus. I mean, I'd love us to sneak Anthony Munkara from Essendon. They can bid on him because this guy is that just he's a goal machine. He's the anti-Christ of Owies. Like, he's all one way. He just snags for days, and that's all he does.
He's an interesting one. Like, for those kind of picks, and this is like, I feel as if we very overrate picks quite a lot. Pretty much anything past 30. How many times does a player actually become good from those picks? So I feel like that's the perfect time to just take a flyer. And Mankara is one of those where he could literally be one of the greatest forwards of all time. He makes something out of nothing, but he also has so many games where he just goes missing. So that's a flyer I wouldn't mind taking a shot at.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And then I think I agree with you. I mean, Holland's for me strikes me as the most obvious choice for Carlton, especially with the scope for inside in the next couple of years. But it fills a need today. Yeah. And then maybe someone like there's names floated around. Jake Walker is basically like if you went to Audi and got Patrick Cripps, bigger body, good grunt, and I would say, in my opinion, Walker, because he has played in that senior level as well in Sandford, which is a very physical league. Always look out for 18-year-olds who have played men's over there because they're psychopaths in South Australia. In my opinion, I'd be quite happy with him starting round one with instead of Setterfield. I think you won't get much different because he is a better user than Setters. So I think there's some scope there. And like you say, them late picks, the percentage of winners from there are usually small forwards, back pockets. That's where you guess. You don't get your key positions there.
And I honestly, apart from just skill and talent, I hope we're really going hard at like leaders from these youngsters and guys that have that hard work ethic, because I think over that period where you look at a lot of their draft busts, I think we almost went talent over guys that are willing to put in those hard yards. And not everyone's a Sam Walsh, but you just look at what he puts in and he gets so much more out of himself because of it. So I hope that's really something we are looking at. Probably another player I'd love us to get. I'm not sure if he's going to be there for us, but I'd love Mateus Filippo. I reckon he is one of my favorite players in this draft. They have him going anywhere from sort of like 8 to sort of 15 or whatnot, mate. I genuinely have him in my top 5 players of this draft because of his ability to go forward. I think he's going to turn into an absolute superstar. So if we could snag him as a big sort of more bodied mid that can move and go forward, that's exciting. He's a match winner.
I'm 100% in agreement. I'd be quite happy looking at the draft class already next year. Presume Carlton finish 5th next year. So it's not a great pick anyway. It's 13 to 14, that mark. There's no one in next year's draft that screams need if Carlton finish top 5, top 6. So I'd be quite happy to trade a future first and Carlton say, right, let's try and get into 14, 15. And I'm a big fan of Bailey Humphrey, and I think it's got to be someone like you say that fits into the culture, who's a hard worker. And I think Humphrey's backstory, there's a great interview with the trauma he's gone through. Yeah. He's had to grow up very quickly. And I think someone with his deficiencies will relish the opportunity. And I could see him being an absolute wonderful type player who could be the Jack Martin that we've desired because he is a natural type player. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does.
Going to throw you under the bus with this one. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you... I'm going to be the host at this stage. As far as the draft and maybe trading up, is there a team that you see around that probably like 15 to 20 odd that maybe doesn't need that pick that you think we could target to trade up, whether it's a future second, pass our second round or whatever we're potentially going to bundle up? Is there any picks that you're eyeing off thinking that they're gettable?
18, 19.
Fair.
That one's
Who's got those?
I don't think GWS. I don't think GWS need them.
Yeah.
I don't think GWS need them. And looking at what they'll pick, they should be able to, with 18 and 19, accommodate the list requirements that they need.
Mate, trade up and get your man Isaac Keeler at pick 18. That'd be tasty.
Mate, I think Isaac Keeler would fit the bill. Someone mentioned Jackson Binns. I can't agree more. I think he's a talent. Lockie Cohen is a guy that I'm a big fan for.
I love him so much. I could see him pushing up and being a winger as well. Like, I know he's played halfback for most of the year, but he's just such a general down there. His footy IQ is unreal.
Do you know what I mean? I could see Carlton doing it. And I think that if Carlton had 18, 19, 10, and 29, do you know what I mean? They've completed.
Yeah.
You could quite easily, just looking at the draft and the potential order, Carlton could be fine, because you know what, as well, Carlton could be in the vicinity of a guy that I am in love with, Matthew Jefferson.
Yeah.
So, and he would be the forward. In my opinion, big call. I like him more than Cadman. I think
that's massive.
Well, Cadman's your traditional key forward like Mackay, but we know I'm a sucker for a guy that's mobile and gets on the deck, and that is what Jefferson does incredibly well. And I agree with Rio here. The small forward, we've covered that. That's why we like Munkara. He's the antichrist of them. He's a pure crummer. All he knows is goals. And I think that's where Carlton's forward line is shithouse. We've got way too much focus on pressure, and we do forget that. Jesse Motlop, in my opinion, will become that. But I would love an Eddie Betts type. Ball hits the deck, goal. Yeah. And we saw that towards Jesse in the last 3 games. But I'd like another live wire kid to put pressure on Jesse.
Yeah, I think we need someone like me and Lockie have been so hot on this, I reckon, since we started the podcast of how many times do you see in our forward 50, no one really wanting the goals? It's like we're looking for the handball, looking for the perfect option. Man, we need someone hungry that goes, no. I'm the best player in the whole competition. I'm snagging it from here. And yeah, that's what I reckon Munkara could do. Something like that would just be perfect.
Yeah, in that round 23 game, I felt Motlop became Josh DeLuca, where he was trying to help his mates out. And I was screaming in the watch-along, just take the piss. Fuck off, Cripps. Fuck off, Kerno. Fuck them. Kick goals and just tell them, no, this is my town, mate. My town.
The best he's played is that, like, quarter against Sydney and then, like, quarter against Collingwood, where literally every time he gets the ball, bang, he's going straight for goals. He doesn't care where he is. And it feels like he makes something happen. So, yeah, that is what we need, those little things. And hopefully he can keep developing. Like, first season in the AFL, we've got an absolute special one there.
I'm with you, because when you watch Tom Papley as well, Tom Papley doesn't give a fuck he's playing with Buddy Franklin. He gives him no respect. You know what I mean? If he's running into goal and Buddy's unmarked inside 50, Papley's like, fuck Buddy. I'm kicking this.
And that almost comes back down to, like, the big reason that everyone spoke about of why we struggled this year and why we didn't take those big moments was because we didn't have those match winners, the guys that could deal with the pressure. And that's where you need someone that goes, no, I'm doing it myself. And so I think that's a big quality that I hoped that we kind of target a little bit in this draft, which is kind of what I was alluding to before, where they want those big moments. They're not going to shy away from it. They're not going to try and get the assist. They're going for it. It's a big need, I think.
Can you imagine Munkara with Motlop, with Durden, Kerno, Harry, and a Bailey Humphries high half forward? 2023 flag, baby.
And wouldn't it be great if we somehow got, like, pick 39 and got him with that, just to absolutely stick it up Essendon, because can't match bids under 40. So cop that.
I wish I was a list manager, because I would literally try and get 39 just to piss someone off. Don't even have to play, but mate, I'm with you. And I mean, that is the Carlton period. We've got excited. We'll definitely bring Big Ian back as well to do some more trade and draft analysis, because I need help. I do it on my own all the time, and I get lonely. But let's check what the other teams do, because this is our segment now to take the piss.
Living life every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Fuck me, I'm looking in the mirror, so foggy, but I've never seen clearer. I don't really.
So a lot of people may disagree with this, right? But we've had the trade period, and I just want to say that I think, without a doubt, Collingwood have absolutely smashed trade period out of the block. Best list management I've ever seen. Like, they have built the best list ever if that trade period was 2016.
I was waiting. I was waiting for when I was going to turn. I was like, there's no way. There is no way you're about to talk up Collingwood. But yeah, good to see that they've got, a Brownlow medalist into the thing that is no good anymore. We love that.
I'd just like to give a shout out as well to an anonymous account that PM'd me after being on SEN and saying, you're a Pommy CUNT, Frampton will be AA.
Oh, no.
So hopefully they're under due diligence, because I assume he means that Billy Frampton likes to drink a bit, because he doesn't mean all Australian. Surely.
I don't know who did it. So if you know who did this, please give him a big shout out on this. But someone on Twitter found that someone had made a hype package of Frampton, and one of them was literally, it was like a spoil against Charlie, where Charlie kicked like 6 goals on him. It's like, mate, what are you guys doing? If that's the best that you've got from this bloke, you are kidding yourself.
It was Sweet Luke. I do love as well, he got a highlight reel when Charlie Curnow retired him. So quality. But big shout out to you. I love an anonymous banter. But obviously there's been today has been manic, and I do want to spend a bit of time just going through some of the trades that came through last minute. But the one that excited me was the old Lockie Hunter out of nowhere going to Melbourne.
I did not expect. I expected him to move early on, and then when there was literally no talk of it, I think everyone assumed, okay, he's just going to stay at the Doggies, no worries. Melbourne, I did not imagine. I don't know what I make of both of their selections. Like, it feels like someone's literally playing like AFL Evolution on the bloody PlayStation here. They're like, oh yeah, who can I get? Oh, we'll bring in Grundy. Why not? Get another ruckman. Oh, we'll get in Lockie Hunter. Like, I just don't think they need either of these two players. And I think I spoke on the potty about Hunter as a potential in for Carlton when he was kind of linked, and thought he's regressing, off-field issues, higher salary. I don't love it. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if he plays and whether he can get back to his best. It was an interesting move, but I think it was like a future 3rd rounder or something. So they're only really paying salary for him. So it's a throw for nothing, really.
There was some bizarre trades. It was a bizarre trade. I agree with you. I mean, we get asked here, Theo, weren't we sniffing around it? I'm with you. I didn't like it purely. I'm really big on the culture. And I just think there's a lot of impressionable young lads, and it's no knock to Lockie Hunter because nothing's confirmed, but it's heavily speculated there was something going on off the field, which has led to this. And for me, I think Carlton, it's taken so long to get this kind of feel-good factor at Carlton, particularly from the players. And I've been here 11 years this year, and I've never heard players from our club actually sound like they're enjoying it. It's always felt to me like they fucking hate it here, don't they? Yeah. And there is a vibe, and anything that could potentially break that, I'm not a part of. It's kind of why I strayed away from bringing mature age players in, because the statistics in the AFL are huge on there is no evidence that bringing in Premiership players wins flags. In fact, every side that's had more than 2 has never gone on to win a flag when it's been brought in externally. The biggest sides that win it, Hawthorn and Richmond in our dynasty, period, 0 players. They built them themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that that is the model when you look around the globe in things that have got our model, our franchise model. I think that's the way. And Lockie Hunter, I think it works differently when you've won a flag and you're rejuvenating like Geelong. Geelong are the exception to the rule. They've done it twice, bring in players, but they are the exception because they've already got winners on the list that they've built and they're adding to it. For Carlton, I don't believe you can teach winning. And I didn't like some of these deals, like the Wiedemann deal I didn't like as well. I think for Essendon, I just don't see why they've done that.
Yeah, he's not the greatest player. I think they were just too desperate for a forward because they had no one else except for 2 meter. And so they've just literally gone at the only one available. It seems a bit strange because, like you say, he's not the best. So why have you now got 2 kind of average forwards? You needed to go out and get the best one or draft a kid. I think he needed to move. it seems like a weird one for Essendon. Like, he'll get that opportunity, but I guess for them, it's probably not going to take him forward. So it's good for us. But yeah, a bit of a strange one. I feel like he would have been much better going to a team that had that perfect Keat already, and then he plays that second or sort of third string.
I think my favourite trade, though, was just after getting rid of Lederman. I'm thinking, you know what, Melbourne? You probably need, like, not a rebuild, but like a refresher. Like, get rid of some, bring some in. They replaced one guy that's never filled their talent with another. It's almost like Essendon, and it was almost like really the best trade that could have been done was Wiedemann for Shaki. And they've just gone, you know what, we couldn't get him fucking working. Do you want to try? We'll try with yours.
I don't know how that guy's still on any AFL list, or he keeps playing games for the Doggies like last year. I was like, have we not seen enough of this guy to know he's no good? And it takes me back to when there was an actual debate on whether you should take Wiedering or Shaki, which is so funny to think about now because, Jesus, imagine if we took Shaki, we would be a disaster. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm all for bringing in a depth player on no money, but nah, I don't know.
No, I'm with you. The lovely Amy wants to know what you're drinking. Are you drinking a tea?
I am. It is a nice little peppermint tea. Thank you.
Hey,
big shout out to T2.
There you are. Look at that. But Tom Mitchell, though, we've got a pie fan in the chat. Mitchell will be amazing at pies. What did everyone in the chat make of Mitchell going? I think they're probably paying him next to nothing. It makes sense, I think, with what they're building. But for me, I would have liked to have seen them put a bit of time into Finlay McRae and one of because their VFL guys have been really flying in their midfielders' next cab. Maybe it was the opportunity to give one of these guys a bit more responsibility, in my opinion, it would have been.
It's that hard thing, I think, for a list manager where like a player like that becomes available and it's, do I take the punt on somewhat proven talent and hope that takes us to the next step? But it's like you said earlier, it's kind of risky because if he doesn't go well, you've put the money into him and then you're stifling the development of others. It's tough. Like, either it works or it doesn't. We're going to find out. I think he kind of is a little bit of what they needed in that midfield with the way he does play. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't take him at Carlton, so he can do whatever he wants over at the Pies.
What was your favourite? What was the best trade? And everyone in the chat, give me yours. What did you think was a trade that you looked at and you just clapped?
Oh, Geelong. Geelong getting Bose and pick 7 for a future third-round pick has to be the best tidy business, particularly with a Jai Clark potentially available around that pick. They've just won the flag and they've managed to pull that off. That's the best one for sure.
I'm 100% agree. Like, you know what? I just find Barmy, the gorgeous Steph there, Geelong, she's straight in, Gav, Geelong, everyone's probably on that. I just couldn't believe what I'd seen. Like honestly, and you know, a lot of people are complaining about Geelong, right? But full credit to them. And people have been asking me, this was a big question, and I know question segments at the end. One of the ones was, Pom, how are they doing this with our salary cap? They're the masters at back-ending and front-ending deals with intelligence. So, like, if you look at their list, let's just say it's costing them 500K for Bose. Let's just say that it's 600, but they're taking 500 of it on. Let's just say they're taking a lot. Next year, you would presume 3 players are retiring off that list.
Exactly.
So suddenly, that money's eaten up in them, and they get a draftee in. And the fact that they've managed to get Jai Clark, and Jai Clark is something else. Like, Jai Clark, for me, him and Cam McKenzie, 2 people that don't get enough love in the AFL, are the 2 most complete midfielders we've seen come through an AFL draft. Like, both of them guys, sexual, their talent. They're all 6 out of 10 in every midfield facet. And Geelong, we're always going to get a Geelong Falcons boy. Like, absolute balmy to me, but great trade.
Yeah, and I hate to give them credit, but probably the other one, as far as definitely what they brought in that I think can propel them, even though it maybe goes against what you're saying about bringing in some of those older players, is Richmond. Like, as soon as, and I hate to say it, but as soon as there were rumors of Hopper and Taranto, I did chuck $10 on Richmond to win the flag because the odds were okay. And it could be that thing that launches them again. It's a smart bit of business to bring in those players with their aging sort of midfield. But again, they've relied heavily on those middle-aged players and maybe hurt their future with losing those sort of first-round picks. So that one's going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out over the next sort of 5 or so years.
It's going to be an interesting one because great acquisitions like Hopper and Taranto. I think Taranto is something they needed. And I think Hopper is the Prestia that's going to stay fit. We know Richmond are a different fish when they've got Prestia, and Hopper, to be fair, has got a few. The always things I look at is when you bring a lot of players in, the midfield is your engine room. How long is that going to take to really get a bit of webbing in there? But it's going to be interesting. One of the trades I really enjoyed, and this is going to be controversial, right, is I loved North ditching Jason Horne-Francis, getting rid of one, right, because GWS are mental. Cadman would have been there and they've paid 12 for it. But if they bring in Wardlaw and Sheasel in 6 years' time, mark my words. I said it when Pies did the Trelaw deal and said, I actually think it's a decent, it'll give them 2 years rebuild. And everyone was like, Pommy mental, and they finished, 4th this year?
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, in 6 years' time, we'll look back at that trade when Jason Horne-Francis becomes what he's going to be, and that is just a very, very good footballer, not generational like people are saying. Sheasel and Wardlaw, they're different. Great. Wardlaw, in my opinion, twice as good as Jason Horne-Francis in today's game. So, huge dub for North.
Oh, great bit of business. Like, they've been so stiff to not get the first draft pick the last couple of years. Like, that is just so unlucky. It's like right when they need them, all the father sons come into it. That absolutely sucks for them. But yeah, to be able to turn pick 1 into 2 and 3, you get 2 shots at it. Would you take, because it looks like GWS are taking Cadman, so it's like yeah, they do need a key forward, but being able to turn Wardlaw into Wardlaw and Sheasel is just insane. Like, Sheasel, I would do so much to get him to play for Carlton. He's exactly that goal scoring. I think he's going to be one of the greatest players that we've seen potentially for my big call there. But that's a great bit of business. Like, they need to bring in like a young core. And if those guys want to be there and they can develop them, unreal get for North.
Mate, I think a lot will depend if Clarkson's still there. I mean, obviously, if Clarkson does still there, I would say Wardlaw and Sheasel particularly, they've got to relish that. But I mean, that is the AFL trade period. Let's have a look. For the first time ever, we're going to hear what has got up your gut and what you found. So let's see what your talking point is this
Mate, thanks for the intro. Unreal, mate.
Hey, and there's a very famous band who wrote that song as well, isn't there? They're a very talented individual. Just tell the audience you are a multifaceted. Not only are you a trade and podcast guru, you've also got a hidden talent, haven't you, Ian?
Oh, used to. Unfortunately, retired now. But yeah, me and Lockie do the podcast. We were in a band together that had some okay success. I'll say I'm pretty happy with what we're able to do. Released some good tunes, played some good shows. So yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, feel free. I'll give it a nice plug. Listen to Stuck Out, give it a go, see if it's your kind of thing. But yeah, so I guess what is my sort of thought this week, and it kind of, I guess, goes on from the little segue there talking about the Jack Bowes deal and salary caps and struggling teams. And I sort of had the thought that does having like a minimum salary cap that teams have to hit, like, do you think that should be scrapped? Because do you think that hurts struggling teams?
I think the salary cap's going to have to be looked at, isn't it? Because it's equalisation, isn't it? It's equalisation. The AFL love equalisation. And I agree with you. Obviously, what as we found is teams are finding ways to manipulate it. I would love a situation where the salary cap is done on a 3-year cycle to try and get rid of this front ending and back ending. I think that's where it falls off. The fact that some teams can, like Geelong, you look every 2 years, you can roughly see $1 million being recycled. That's what, if the AFL are serious, they should clump the fees in a 3-year period and say, you've got to be between this figure and make it a little bit harder for teams to front end and back-end deals, because you're seeing the opposite happen when you get it wrong. Gold Coast.
Yeah.
So they signed that contract in 2019 when they were as bad as Carlton. And look, it's backfired horrifically. They've lost a valuable pick. They've lost a lot from that. So I think that's what you need to do. But I agree with you. It's a weird thing, isn't it, the salary caps? Because some teams get it right. Some people get it horribly wrong.
Yeah, and like if you look at it, it sort of forces those struggling teams to have to almost overpay for guys that they shouldn't be paying that much money for because they have to hit a target. Like you look at what we did, and I think that the one thing Sauce was really good at was managing what we were paying. Like he'd bring in Lobie on a ridiculous contract for 2 years because we just needed to hit the salary cap, and little things like that, like Reece Palmer, another one that was never really going to play, but we just needed to hit the salary cap. But other teams end up paying players for too long. And yeah, it's probably like poor list management. You can definitely say that. But does that end up leading to things like this where a Gold Coast go, oh shit, like we've had to pay too many players because we needed to make the salary cap in the first place? You try to bring in a few guys, who knows? And then I think if you change this having to hit the salary cap, it gives these teams a better chance to actually go out in free agency. A lot of people talking about equalization and only the players always, the free agents, they go to the good teams. They never go into the poor ones. Well, if they have that little bit of extra money because they haven't had to hit this thing, then will they be out? Will a team like North be able to go out there and get the best players because they can offer them astronomical value? Like, does that hurt the market too much? I don't know, but it just seems weird to me that they have to hit a certain total. And like, why not? Why can't they just pay the players what they're actually worth?
I think having a minimum and a max, I don't like. I'm not a salary cap fan, to be honest. But the minimum requirement, I think, is ridiculous. I think if a team wants to bank 10 million of a 10.8 million salary cap, they're entitled to. I think there needs to be a bit more because, like you say, I think it does two things. One, traditionally, these teams are going to take Reece Palmer's and that shit player, which my big bugbear with players like Reece Palmer who got like clubs purely to try and hit the minimum requirement is that's taking an opportunity off an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Who could potentially make it in the industry. And look at Geelong, 11 players, 50 over. It's possible. Good development makes a player that you've missed. But also, like you say, it creates way too much overpaying of shit players, and then good players don't get paid what they're deserved. I'd love to see, like I say, I think the answer is having a 3-year, not doing it year to year, what they do, having a 3-year rolling. So that then makes it a lot more complicated for front-ended deals, back-ended deals, and it puts more onus on intelligence as opposed to last-minute renegotiations.
No, I think it's like there's a lot of things that I would change if I was in charge of the AFL, but that's just one of the things that I don't think it's spoken about enough that I thought would be a nice little discussion point.
No, I love it. And I think people in the chat as well, they agree. I mean, this is a good one here. I mean, this could be something like, I mean, the AFL probably are going to have to, aren't they, at some point, because it seems to happen. I mean, I've got a segment about this a bit later at the end, John, so I'll cover it a bit more in depth because it's one of my rants, but you're spot on. And I mean, on the same subject, we can merge these because we've been very proactive. Let's have a look at Pom's Ponder.
Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top.
Couldn't agree with Bugs Belmore as well. Mate, music died in 1990, mate. It died. They just stopped making it. But mine here as well is to back up what Ian's saying is that eventually, obviously, that brings PSD into involvement. And it's my firm belief that PSD now is punishing the player, not the club. And we saw it today. I'll use two examples. Ollie Henry, the most ridiculous reason to want to leave. He's 20 minutes fucking down the road. But let's just say, in today's AFL, North have got estimated the biggest net deficit. So they've got a lot of money to burn. If he'd gone to PSD, potentially we could have had Dunkley and Ollie Henry. And doing that whole cheat of setting your value in the PSD, which is what AFL do to help the players not have to go somewhere they don't want to. North could have matched anything that the other clubs could have matched. They have got so much cap space. And PSD should be there to punish clubs who haven't done their due diligence and tied players away. Instead, though, look at Dunkley's situation. He's made it clear 2 years ago he wanted to go to Essendon. This year, he's very adamant he was going to Brisbane and he wanted to leave. Potentially, you look where Brisbane had a pick. There was no way in hell he was going there. And he was hoping that doggies were reasonable. And so in my opinion, it should be, if they haven't signed a contract by October the 1st, they just sign a contract. It should be up to the player then, and fuck the club.
Oh, like I hate the free agency rules. I hate that players can be out of contract, but they're not a free agent. So you've got to trade for them and they can't just go where they want. Like, you don't have a contract. Why do they have to go through this weird draft that no one really knows why it exists, but it kind of just sits there? It just makes no sense. Like, they need to change free agency big time. That's maybe another discussion. But like, yeah, it hurts the player because they're sitting there trying to get to a club. They're out of contract or whatnot, trying to get there. And then for whatever reason, one club's not coming to the table. One club wants too much. It's a big dick contest. Like, they're trying to see who's going to win the trade, which is another big issue. And then you come to the point where the player's going, oh shit, do I have to go through this thing and potentially end up at a club that I don't want to play for? Yeah, I agree. I think it just hurts the player, and it's weirdly probably just like a nothing threat too, because I don't think there's ever been a time, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a player has gone through the preseason draft and ended up at a club that they said they wouldn't go to. Like, I know Nick Stevens was there, but he said he wanted to go to Collingwood, but he still said he would go to Carlton. Yeah. And I feel like if you're a list manager, like, would you really take a punt on a guy that doesn't want to go to your club, that you maybe haven't done the medical on, that you haven't done these little nuance investigations on? I'm not sure if they would, but still the threat is there, and that's an issue for those players. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was excited last year when North took the piss with Hugh Greenwood and worked that loophole out. And
that was good. That was unreal. I love seeing that.
And that's why I was hoping one of these guys would go to PSD, because I guarantee you now, if a big brand name player goes to PSD, and it won't be your Gold Coast that get punished. We did it to Jack Martin. But if it's a big Melbourne club, you watch the AFL go, oh, shit. And I've had a few fans from Brisbane go, oh, Pommy, though, mate, if that was Cripps, you'd change your tune. And I'm like, nah, I fucking wouldn't. Like, I would be having a go at Nick Austin and say, why didn't you trade him the year before if there was a chance he wasn't going to sign? And secondly, why don't you just accept whatever was fucking there with a minute to go? Like, that's your fault. Like, I believe the clubs should be punished if they can't get the deal done. And I'd love to see, maybe, because I hate the priority pick system and the comp pick system.
Yes.
But I would love the AFL, October the 1st, they go, right, Josh Dunkley's out. We've done our little algorithm based on historical players. We're going to deduct it by 30% because obviously they shouldn't get the maximum fee. But if a pick comes in between this range, must be accepted. Like the Bosnam rule in the UK, in soccer, which if it's matched, nothing any club can do about it. It's activated and they leave. That's what they should do, because it's getting to the stage where, like Setterfield, he wanted 2 years. Yeah. He was quite open about it, and the club has been open about it. What happens if he'd gone to North for a year and suddenly his career is up shit creek?
Yeah. Oh, it's. I feel like it needs someone to buck the trend, and someone needs to move in this preseason draft, and it's for all. The AFL will step in and something will actually happen, because the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to get. And when you look at like Brisbane, when a player nominates to go to you, it's up to you to then work with the club and get a deal to happen, because that player's had to come out. They've had to come out publicly. Like, it's so hard for them to then go back to that club, particularly him. It would be his second year in a row that he's gone, I want to leave. Like, that's a big thing from a player's point of view. Like, you think about mental well-being and things like that. Like, that's so hard for him if that deal doesn't go through. So it's up to Brisbane to actually go, okay, let's get this deal to happen. And if they're not coming to the table, what are you doing? Ultimately, it gets done. But the threat of the preseason draft, it hurts the players, 100%.
Mate, spot on, and I'd love to see it change. But, I mean, we've got a couple of cracking controversial opinions, and I'm looking forward to Ian, so let's get straight into it.
Well, it's a good thing that I sort of segued myself into this, because I was talking about clubs not coming to the table. We're on the trade table, and this is it. My controversial opinion is that clubs should be allowed to trade players to any club that they like. Doesn't have to just be the players nominated to go to the X club. No. The club that they're currently at can move them anywhere. And, or at least if a player has made a trade request, I'm happy to have a bit of leeway with it. If a player said, I want to leave, the option is open to everyone, because players are getting too much power. You look at what it is, that they're contracted, they can say wherever they want to go, and you've got to get rid of them. Like, yes, you can hold them to the contract, but do you really want to bring them back in? There's not many times it does happen successfully. And then they get free agents after a couple of years, and then they can move anywhere anyway. So the power's not with the club. And you look at, say, Horn Francis, for an example. He says, I'm homesick. I want to go back to South Australia, but only to Port Adelaide. Like, that's bullshit. Like, you can't say you're homesick and then say, I will only go to one club. And it happens far too often. So I think the club should have the power, even if it's, and I've seen someone suggest this on Trade Radio, saying that they should have to nominate 2 clubs to get a deal done. And you think about it in this case, like, I think most clubs will look to do right by the player. And if they've nominated Port Adelaide, they'll do their best to get this deal happening. But they've got the chance there that if they're saying, I want 2 first rounders, and, Port are saying, we'll give you 1 because you're going to lose the player, and Adelaide say, hey, we'll give you 2, then it comes back to Port to have to make the deal. And yeah, you're most likely, again, do right by the player, get him to Port Adelaide, but it forces you to actually get the best deal for your player. And that's why I think it should happen. What do you reckon, Pommy?
Mate, I think, there's nothing, as a man who traveled the world from a very young age, I cannot understand, for me, mentally, how you could be homesick to the point that you can nominate an exact fucking street.
Yeah.
Australia's big, but it ain't that fucking big.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like nowadays, Skype, they've got 3 months off a year. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've got good lives. But if you are homesick, like, Ames nails it. Tim Kelly wanted to go home to Perth, was a Freo fan, but it had to be Eagles. Like, Jason on Francis has to be Port. Adelaide ain't that fucking big. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's definitely not.
Like, you're telling me if he was playing for the Crows, he couldn't see his ma? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, he could go around for Sunday lunch. Like, is Adelaide like 1980s Germany and split into 2? You know what I mean? He's got to get a passport.
Like, I could get it if for whatever reason it's like we've got a team in Broome and it's like, oh, well, I want to go to WA, but like I need the Perth teams. Like, I can't be going up there. It's too far. Maybe then, but it's just ridiculous. Like, the players need to grow up a little bit. Like, it's a national competition. You can stay 2 hours away. It's okay, but yeah.
Mate, the one that fucks me off is when players go, I want to move to Melbourne, right? And like literally all the Melbourne clubs apart from Geelong, their base camp is 12 minutes away from each other. You know what I mean? Like, you can get a taxi. Like, but I'll counter this, and I'd love chat's thoughts and yours, Ian. You know what fucks me off, though, is no club does what you're saying. I would have loved, right, when GWS had all them picks, right? In the Premier League, what we have, and Man United and Man City, when Man City started to get money, Man United were the masters under Alex Ferguson of just bidding on players 10 million more to up the price. Yeah. And they didn't even fucking want the player, but they would be very public and go, so in this case, let's have a look at, say, Jason on Francis. GWS with all their picks would have gone, tell you what, we'll give you pick 3 and pick 12 right here and right now, Jason on Francis. And suddenly, like you say, GWS are like, oh shit, he wants to go to Port though. And they're like, well, they're only offering us a future first and a back scratch when we next go to Adelaide. They're giving us 2 first rounders this year. And for me, the AFL is way too nice. Like, even with Brisbane openly said, we want to move down because we've got to sacrifice picks to have the best player in this draft. So it makes more sense if we can try and give that and break it into 230s because we can cheat the system. And clubs are like, oh, okay, we'll help you do that and get better. I want ruthlessness. I would have loved if I was Carlton and they rang me and said, Pom, please, mate, we need your help. I'd be like, get fucked.
100%. Like, why are we helping these teams? Like, that whole system is a rot as well. Like, is another unpopular opinion. It was going to be one as well. I had to choose between the two. But it's like, how can you, if you're bidding on a player, like, trying to match the bid in the first round, how can you not have a first round pick? You should have to have a pick in that round and match the points. The fact that they're like first picks like 31 or something stupid, that's ridiculous. Exactly, though. But why clubs going, oh, yeah, I'll give you that pick? No, stuff them.
You know what fucks me off about it as well? He's like, this year, Brisbane are going to lose about 4 picks, right? Doing it. Them picks just go, right?
Yeah.
They're just imaginary. They never happened. That should be compensation to North. So North, suddenly, in my opinion, should get any of them picks burnt, go to North, and then North have an Arsenal. So I would love to see father-sons, if we keep it, it's either you can't be matched till pick 18. I'd love them to do that. They won't do it though because they've got some kind of ceremony. But I would love them to say, tell you what, father-son nominations are done before, way before the draft and before the trade period. I'd love to say, right, once the draft order's finalised, North, are you going to put a bid on him in the first and teams ballot? And then they go, right, okay, cool. Here it is. They're going to bid pick 1. We're accepting it. You're going to have to lose all your picks. Here you are, North. You've got 5 picks now to trade with. And punish the teams. There should be a punishment because what annoys me is in the last 2 years, we've had some of the best players come through this draft be bound to clubs purely because the dad was a bit good and got laid. Like, Brisbane haven't done anything about this.
Yeah.
I don't think they helped Mr. Ashcroft when he was getting pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, so why do they benefit from it and every other club suffers?
Yeah, like it's a nice tradition and I like keeping the families there. Like, it's a nice thing in this game, but there needs to be something changed around that because it's getting too ridiculous. Like, I know it doesn't happen often. It's a weird time where in the last few years we've had 2 in a row, but something needs to change because when this does happen, and it clearly will happen, it's just unfair to every other football team.
Yeah, I just think there should be some offset, like especially with North. Like, North could have had Dacos and Ashcroft, and suddenly they'd be laughing. Laughing. Do you know what I mean? But they've got no I mean, it would have been more logical as well. My argument here as well is spot on. Because if they could have gone with Nick Dacos, he's Victorian. Chances are he's not going to be homesick. So there should be. I like the father-son rule, but I think the father-son rule should have a caveat of a benefit for the team with pick 1 that they can't take him. Because right now, pick 1 is pick 2. So, and Brisbane finished what? Top 8. They've got pick 1. Makes no sense.
Yeah. It's not good. It's not good.
Do you know what I mean? Well, mine's on the similar vein. And I'd love your opinion on this. And I'd love the chats. And I just think equalization is the biggest fucking myth in the world. And I think it doesn't matter what rules you change. Unlimited salary cap, minimal salary cap, tiered salary cap. The MLS use that if you finish first, you have less money to spend. You get a bonus if you finish last. Doesn't matter because what will happen is intelligent, well-run, successful clubs will find mediums to cheat the system. Geelong, front and back loading deals. Do you know what I mean? That is intelligent and it manipulates the equalization. Other clubs just aren't smart enough or have a shit reputation. They can't say, tell you what, 200K for 3 years and then we'll give you 800 because they're like, well, you're dog shit. I'll probably leave you here too, if I'm honest. But it doesn't matter what you do. So the AFL need to get this out because I fear if the AFL keep doing this, we're going to start having a fucking trophy ceremony for finishing 9th. Like, it should be winner, best, win. That's it. Everyone else is irrelevant.
It's a good point because, look, it always happens. If you're struggling, it is so hard to turn your club around if you don't have the right players and the right people there. You look at us from when the whole salary cap scandal, we've struggled to get back to the top. It's only really now that you're starting to see us get there again. I know there was that little bit in sort of mid 2010s where we were making finals for a couple of years, but yeah, like you can try. It's obvious that like giving teams draft picks doesn't work because it's hard to develop the youngsters if you don't have the structure around them. And we can try to give them picks to trade, but then they are forced to trade them, so the value's lower anyway. There's no way to even the competition, and I don't think the competition should be even. And genuine argument, why should every team be as good as each other? Because their games will be good. Like people thought that like Geelong were close to Sydney. Look at that happen in the grand final. Like, yeah, it's just equalization just can't work. I like that we have the salary cap and you don't turn it into what unfortunately a lot happens in a lot of, soccer leagues around the world where you get like the one team in the league, like Bayern Munich, where it's like, oh, cool, we're the best. We will always get the best players. Good luck to anyone else. I don't want it to go to that extreme, but yeah, I don't think there's an issue with good players going to the best teams. You've just got to be smarter with how you draft, with how you pick up the bargains, with how you use your salary cap, and you'll get back up there. Teams have done it. Teams have turned it around.
Yeah, Spawn, and like for me, it's the silly things they do. Like I would love when it's a salary cap league, right? And I think Tony makes a good point here. They've had so many picks BWS, right? And they're basically now becoming the development for the rest of the league, right? They do the hard work for 3 years, and everyone else reaps the rewards, unless you count and you give us the crap ones. But I'd love to see the AFL think, right, what is the equalisation here? It's the cap, right? It's the cap. Why isn't that the reward for being shit? Like, and I said this in 2019 about Gold Coast. I would say to them, you know what? The top teams, front and back end their deals. So what we're going to do is we're going to help you out. We're going to give you $3 million over 4 years. That by the 4th year, your cap must go back to what everyone else is. But you've got this nest egg, and we're going to give you pick 10, and that must be traded. And then they could go to players at the time like Nat Fife and say, tell you what, Nat, we'll give you $2.8 million a year for the next 3 years to set us up, build us, build the culture, bring a couple of your pals, and we'll give 1 and 10 to Fremantle. They can rejuvenate their list. And they should be the comps, not giving picks, because it's been proven when your team is shit, you just waste the picks.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, you're getting the best talent in, but you're shit. So how is that really going to make you better? You look at us, like how many picks did we have to bring in for us to finally turn it around? I don't think it was necessarily all the draft picks. Like, yeah, Sauce nailed that draft where we were able to bring in Harry, Charlie, and the like, and Weeders and all that. But how often does that happen for other clubs? And still, we needed a lot more than that to get it right. Like the problem with GWS has been they get all these picks, they get all this top talent, they have to overpay all of them to keep them, because why would you want to stay with a club that has no culture, be in Western Sydney anyway? It's expensive. It's not that nice a place. People want to leave. So it's hard to keep them. And like you said, if you give them a bit more salary cap to handle that, to be able to build something, will that then give them the success where GWS end up winning a few flags? Now, all of a sudden, they're one of the teams that people want to go to because they've been able to forge success, build a good culture. Giving them picks does nothing.
Do you know what I mean? Spot on. Like, I just think it makes sense. And answer your question, Yvel, my mate. Good to have you back. Get some neons, my brother. eBay neons. eBay neons. But like Dabo says, it was an example, 2.8 million. I wouldn't pay Nat 5 2.8 million. I'd pay him 4 because I'm a sucker for the hair. But this is what I mean, Dabo. You've nailed it. The AFL run shit poorly. And to me, what do GWS, and you touched on it, lack over Sydney? The big thing is history. So if I'm a player, okay, Sydney's a bit of a shithole. Don't want to go there. But Sydney Swans, South Melbourne, historic, lineage. Oh, go and play for them. They're all right. GWS, oh, they're just Gill's fucking bet he made over a game of cards in 1998. Fucking ain't playing for them.
And Sydney's been so good at being able to like build this academy where they just keep rorting that system. GWS hasn't been able to do anything with theirs. So like, what are you doing, guys? Seriously, surely they should be putting money into that thing and trying to get the best Sydney talent over there. Like that's the way to build it. You look at even what Gold Coast have tried to do with bringing in a Rowell and Anderson, trying to, if we're drafting players, get guys that have played together and try to build it that way instead of constantly having guys leave and go back to other states. Like there's little tricks you can do that like these poorly run clubs are clearly not doing. It's why they're in the situations they're in. And again, giving them more assistance that hasn't worked historically isn't going to fix the problem.
Mate, Spawn, and like I agree with you, Val, here, right? Gold Coast. For me, Gold Coast is like Filey in the UK. Right, it's used for two things. It's God's waiting room because it's full of retirees, and it's full of people who go there in the summer to get laid in schoolies. Like, what incentive is there to go? What a ridiculous place to put a football team, anyway. But they don't help them out. Like the AFL just go, have a pick and fucking waste it. Like Gold Coast should be if you're Dustin Martin or someone like that. Bit of a celebrity area, isn't it? You know, get on the beers, have a good time. Give them the extra money and say, look, you know what? We'll set you up for life. Two of you come in, get the people through the door, because all they've got to do is play finals, and suddenly people won't go Gold Coast, who are they? They'll be like, oh, this is all right. This is all right. I don't mind it here.
And like, I guess going back to my point, like if they're not having to as well, to an extent, having to hit this minimum cap with shit players, they might have more money to be able to get that Dustin Martin across, to get these guys, because, a lot of players will just go for success. But, mate, if you're offering $1 million more than anyone else, you'll get one or two surely. Like, you don't have that long in your AFL career. There will be players that will say, I can build something here. I can build a legacy. That's surely a part of it as well. If you're the one that makes Gold Coast the destination club, you could be one of the all-time greats. You get paid a shit ton to do it. Weather's beautiful. It's not a bad thing.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like Bugsball, they had one. Like that's the problem. They had one good player. I mean, when Gary Ablett first went there, it was Gary Ablett and a load of guys who played NRL. You know, like, Gary Ablett was playing alongside me. You know what I mean? That's what they should have done at that point when Ablett was there. Go, right, okay, it's starting to build with a bit of fruit. Here's a bit more cash. Get someone in to help Gary Ablett. Get yourselves established, and then you'll go back to the equalisation. And it worries me. It worries me. But we'll come on to your questions. We'll do 10 minutes. I've got a couple. Fire them in. Beautiful. Because Ian's a genius. So fire them in.
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate and finally make a move. I think of you and all the shit you don't do. Well, I'ma make hella shit.
A great one here from Big Gav. Do we think that Setters was one of the ones that he alluded to about work ethic and training? That was a very interesting one for those at home who didn't see it. In the BNF, he mentioned do that extra training session, do that extra rub down session, apply yourself, get busy, getting better. And many people took that, and I did as well, that's maybe a pot shot some players.
It's an interesting point. It genuinely could be. Like, I don't know if it is. I could not tell you, but like, there's definitely got to be a few players out there that, like, you talk about durability was another thing he was alluding to. Obviously, Setters has been fine injury-wise, but it's clear that these better guys that we've been able to bring into this football club, they understand what it takes to be successful, and they're here going, he doesn't have it, he doesn't have it. And the fact that they're so willing to let a Stocker and a Setterfield go that some fans really rate quite highly, particularly a Stocker, shows you that there's other things that we don't see. So I think you could potentially have nailed that one, Gavin. Who knows?
I wouldn't be surprised. I'd love to. I always have there's a part of me that loves to hear what goes on inside, but then there's also a part of me that doesn't want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'll probably punch a puppy or something. I mean, but that's what it is. But it could well be. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that was a surprise. I think when you look at the delistings this year, you probably wouldn't have called the people leaving.
Yeah,
Which
I
would
think a few
allude
of
to
them
me.
are unlucky that a few others were contracted. I think that didn't help their cause. But it's interesting when you hear things like, oh, they weren't doing the extra recovery sessions. It's like, why were you not? Surely you should be doing everything in your power to, one, like just impress the coaches and whatnot. If it's available to you, surely you want to get the best out of yourself. It seems weird that, I guess from my point, like if I had the talent to be on an AFL list, I would be doing everything in my power to make sure I stay on that list. So it seems weird that there's players that just, for whatever reason, don't have that motivation to go to that next level.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? I mean, I think for a lot of the players, from just what Harry said, I don't think they've ever been pushed.
Yeah.
And I think for some, where I work now, when I first came in, the guy before me just didn't give a shit. So suddenly when you come in as the new kid and you're expecting things, some people are like, well, hang about, I've got my salary for doing fuck all. What do you mean I've got to work? And some don't adapt, where some are like, thank God you're here and pushing me, because I was getting bored. I was on Facebook all day. So there'll be that little feeding out where Voss is demanding standards, but before it was like, oh, well done, you've turned up to work on time. High five. So I think there'll be a bit 100%. Of a teething, I'd call it. Lockie, imagine a Tasmanian team. It would be a shambles. What do we think of a Tasmanian team? Do you think a Tassie team could work?
I'd love to see a Tassie team, firstly, but I don't know. A lot of people say, like, is the talent there? I don't know. I weirdly would still like to see, because it just means more guys get an opportunity to play at the level. But it's so tough to start an expansion team. If they existed 5-6 years ago, I reckon they would have had a better chance, because does a Revolt go there? Even though he's not that amazing, like a Mitch Robinson, do those guys end up going and playing for them? Like right now, I don't know if there's that much Tassie talent available that would want to move there. I'd hope it works, but it's ridiculous. It's so hard to sort that out being a new club. What do you reckon, Pommy?
They're mental though, Tassie, aren't they? Like when you watch the Hobart Hurricanes, like they get behind their team. They've got a netball team. They pack the venue.
The Jack Jumpers in the NBL has gone really well for them.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'll give the Tassies this, the mental. Like I'd imagine if Tassie had a professional bloody tiddlywink side, they'd get 80k in. Like they seem to take to it. I'd hope they'd learn the lessons though at GWS and Gold Coast and be like, you know what we're going to do what Pommy and Ian discussed and give them double the salary cap. Give them double the salary cap for 5 years and say, look, get some players. Get some players in, pay them a little bit overs, settle them. Like, and I'm not talking about good players. Like, imagine someone like Jacob Hopper, who I don't think he's elite grade. Yeah. I think he's good. But suddenly he's on $1 million a year. He's going to be like, well, fuck, I wouldn't get this anywhere else.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I know how to play and I'm okay. Like, get a few of them in, make them stable, mid-table side, and then start hunting, because there's some great kids coming through in Tassie, and it's getting better every year. So, I like it. And Yaval there, look, is that what we'd call them? The Tassie Feral Bogans?
I like it. I love that one.
I might defect. I'd love 20 teams on the AFL. It'd make, and Bugs Bella will agree with me here, it'd be very easy to do a fair fixture list if you had that, because you could have 19 rounds, one each.
Well, that's 100%. Well, we need to sort that out. Fixturing is a big issue, and I don't know. Can you have an uneven amount of teams in the league? Like, do you have to then bring in another one if we do this, or do we have to relocate? I don't know. It feels weird to have uneven.
Well, no one knows what the fuck goes on with the fixture list now, do they? I mean, like they reckon if you actually go through. I did it at the start of the year as well. I went through trying to work out the algorithm, and they claim there is a sophisticated algorithm. Fuck, well, no. Jesus. No. I don't know what the maths is on it, but it's...
they need to sort that out.
I'd love a Northern Territories one.
Yeah.
Imagine that not... Because I watch a lot of the Northern Territories kids come through, mate. They would be the most exciting team in the world. Wouldn't be able to defend, but they'd be taking hangers Be like a 200 versus 180 every game. It'd be gross.
Oh, it'd be unreal. Would love it.
Ben, I'm going to leave that comment well alone, but good banter. I appreciate it. And the last one, Paul Hill. Can you please explain what goes through Kane Corn's head? Well, it's easy, nothing. When he says Harry Deal was crap, but JHF Steel is good. Say what? What is everyone's thoughts on that? Ian, take me through. You're Australian, so's Kane Corns. You may be able to get through to me.
I don't understand this man. He started winning me over a little bit, I reckon, the last couple of years. I've liked a few more of his takes. I didn't think he was too bad, but oh my God, what is he doing here? Like, I agree with him in the long contracts. I don't love them because of the risk, but you can't be out there continually every single time saying no long contracts, none. I think he even said like anything over like 5 years is ludicrous. I don't care who you are in the AFL, don't care your age. Anything over 5 years is stupid or something along those lines. And now he's come out immediately and gone, nah, but the Horn Francis one to Port is unbelievable. We love that. Like, it's beyond clear now that this man just takes the piss. Like, he doesn't give a shit what he has to say. He's saying whatever he can. And like, yeah, it's just ridiculous, this man. Yeah. I don't know how he gets away with it so much from those in the media sphere. Like, the fans give it to him, but someone in the media has to call him out on this, surely. Some of his co-hosts, please.
Well, I mean, usually my Pom's rant is pot shot in the media.
Nobody is.
Now I appear on the late night SEN radio with Paolo. I have to like tone it down because I'm
sold out.
No, I'll still do it. Kane Corns, though, what was interesting, right? And this is literally the day before Carlton signed Harry Mackay. Now, this is the direct gospel, according to Kane Corns. He did an article about the most valuable players in the AFL if we were like the EPL and we had an open market, contracts meant fuck all, and you could buy whoever you wanted. In at 4 was Harry Mackay, right? And this is how he described Harry. Key forwards, we've seen these are the most valuable commodity in today's game. If you don't have one, you need to go out and find one. Someone that can mark, present, and in his age bracket would be the player that you could potentially pencil in for the next 10 years and create a dynasty, right? Next day...
So he wants a 10-year contract, does he?
next day, he said it was fucking ludicrous.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. What changed in a day? Like, honestly, when we signed it, I was actually like, oh, Kane Corns is probably going to be like, oh, said it in the article, boys. Yeah. And he suddenly was like, dog shit. Harry shit.
It's just what's lacking with like the mainstream media. And it's the reason why like fan channels and stuff like this exist and why people almost enjoy it more than what's out there, because they're always trying to get hot takes and they have to like have the talking point instead of just actually breaking it down like an intelligent human being going, okay, it's a long-term contract. Don't like them. This is the risk. And then say, well, why have Carlton done this? Well, other teams would have been offering ridiculous more money, same amount of years. You have to try and keep him. You can't probably give him a 5-year contract because will he stay if he's being offered $1 million more over 3 more years? Like, you have to go and in between if you're offering him less money. So to keep him, that's market value. But they don't have this discussion. They just go, nah, this is the hot take. This is going to drive the clicks. This is what's going to get people angry. Let's run with it. And it's why people will stop listening to it.
Mate, it's one of the weirdest things I've seen. I mean, there was also snippets if you go back to 2019 where Port were upset they missed out on Junior Rioli. And he was like basically saying, nah, it's obvious, inconsistent. But now he's telling you that he could be as good as he could rise to Cyril levels. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Kane, mate. Like, you need to calm down. But I agree. My issue with it, and I think you've nailed it there, Ian, is I'd like someone in the media just occasionally to be objective. Yeah. And be like, you know what? Let's break this down and let's give him a kudos. But it does seem the media has become like almost like politicians, just wanting the clicks and likes. No one wants to talk about the game. They just want to say outlandish statements.
Yeah. It needs more in-depth. You need someone out there to actually tried, like that's what has probably annoyed me as well with like trying to listen to trade radio. Instead of them actually trying to break down a deal and go, what should he be worth? What can this team do to get this deal across the line? They talk about everything for half a second with no actual sense. Matt Randall doesn't have a clue who's still playing on an AFL list, giving the worst takes of all time. Oh, bloke's got no idea. But like you're getting these people to give their opinions. It's just a disaster.
Someone actually mentioned it on SEN, and I forgot he works for SEN because someone mentioned it and asked me a question when I was on there the other night, and I said, I wouldn't take his word for it. In the last 6 months, he said every 18 side is the best forward line in the comp, even with retirees. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure he had Carlton's as the best with bloody Fev in there. He was like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing Fev with Kerner and Mackay with Judd kicking into him. And I'm like, what?
What is happening? What is going on?
What is going on?
Oh, I love it.
I love the way they introduce him as well as list management guru.
Oh, why put your hand up if like you clearly have not done any research and you refuse to do any research on clubs when you're doing this list analysis? I reckon, and like, I mean, fair play to him. Get that bag, go out there, and then when you get asked to do the GWS list review, that's when you start Googling, well, who's on this list? Who can I talk about right now? I don't mind it.
Mate, I'm like you. I put a bit of effort, and thank you very much, Bugs Bell. Much love. I put a bit of effort into what I do. Sometimes I listen to them on the radio and go, I should start throwing accusations at players. I mean, be like, Paddy Dow can only play football if he has a white teddy bear in his room that night. And until that changes, he's never going to make it. And everyone will be like, have you got any stats for that? Nah, just fucking fact, mate, innit? I mean, it is the fact. Fuck you. Are they like it's just mental? But well, thank you very much, Ian. Honestly, those out there, if you haven't already, disgrace, shame on you. Navy Blue Corner, legit, in the dark times, in the good times, they are the best pair, Big Lockie and Ian. They're always positive, always happy, and literally, they are my go-to podcast, right? I either listen to myself because I'm arrogant or I listen to them. And they're always good, always accommodating, and a real good vibe there. It's a nice, happy place.
Mate, you're far too kind. Thank you for that, Pommy. You're like my one of my favorite shows on YouTube as well. So it's nice that to get a bit of a collab, even if it means that Fazz isn't here. Would be nice to do this with the three of us as well. I reckon that'd be all right. But I've tried to fill in his shoes as best as possible. Tried to bring a bit of facial hair to this because I know Fazz does that so well as well. But no, thanks for having me. It's been an absolute ball. I've loved it. And thanks for everyone for watching. If you haven't subscribed to Pommy and Oz already, if you haven't liked this, what are you doing? Do it now, please. Because Pommy does some amazing stuff here.
Thank you very much, mate. You're too kind. But honestly, you've probably saved the cat being kicked many a time after a game. I listened to you guys on my way home from work, and they've got an uncanny knack of finding one positive. Like Ian and Lockie can find literally in 150-point loss. They can find one positive, and it keeps you going. Like it brings you back. And I appreciate it.
Oh no, thanks, mate. It's been a ball. I've loved it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. See you next week. Much love. And Lockie and Ian will be back. I promise you that.